Xiaomi have been very busy recently. They've just released a bunch of new phones. First we had the Redmi Note 7. I've had that on the channel. It's been out a while. You've seen loads of reviews on it. We've also just had the new Xiaomi 9 announcement. Also at the same time as releasing the Xiaomi 9, Xiaomi released the 9 SE. This is a cheaper version. There's some similarities and a lot of differences between the 9 and the 9 SE. And also the Redmi Note 7. They're coming in at different price points and they have a lot of different options. Which one is right for you? Which one is the best value for money? Which one should you buy? Right, let's kick off with that Redmi Note 7. I've had it on the channel. I've done some reviews of it. I've unboxed it. Really impressed with this phone. Honestly, this is a really good performer. This is the Chinese version, obviously. I live in Shenzhen. So this is the 3GB version. That starts at 999 RMB here in China. This has an LCD screen. It's 6.3 inches and I think the screen for the price is really good. It's bright, it's colourful, it's a really decent panel. Now the new Xiaomi 9 and also the SE both share an AMOLED panel. AMOLED in my opinion is better than LCD. These AMOLEDs that I've seen on the Xiaomi 9, when I got to look at that one, it's a really good panel. The blacks are super deep black and I just really like the look of an AMOLED panel. So the 9 and the 9 SE are more expensive than the Redmi Note 7. The Redmi Note 7 is the cheapest of the bunch. You get an LCD screen. AMOLED's definitely better and will help you to save more battery, but the difference is not going to be huge. I really like the screen on this Redmi Note 7. I just think it does the job really well and it's certainly the cheapest phone. The Xiaomi 9 has a 6.4 inch. The Xiaomi SE has a 5.9 inch, basically 6-inch screen. But in terms of screen quality, actually, there's no real difference between the 9 and the 9 SE except for the size. Another difference that you'll find between the Redmi Note 7 and the new Xiaomi 9 and 9 SE is the bezels. Now the bezel on this on the bottom is a little big. Now for the price, I think they do really well. But definitely this bottom bezel is much bigger than the new Xiaomi 9 and Xiaomi 9 SE. When I was using the Xiaomi 9, those bezels are tiny. They really are. They've shown percentage differences between the Xiaomi 8 and the Xiaomi 9 in percentage terms and also in the real world. Those bezels on the new Xiaomi 9 are really small. I'm really impressed with how small the bezels are, considering that the price on that one in China is 3,000 RMB. In terms of processing power, again, all three are different. The new Xiaomi 9, of course, using the 855 from Snapdragon, the newest chip, the best chip from Snapdragon. The Xiaomi 9 SE uses a Snapdragon 712, so that firmly places it in mid-range territory. But the price on the 9 SE starts at 2,000 RMB in China. That is a really, really low price, a really, really good price for essentially a mid-range phone. The Redmi Note 7, of course, uses the Snapdragon 660. I really like that chip. It's in a lot of budget phones, and the Redmi Note 7, I think, uses it very well. The camera on this thing and the smoothness of the operating system surprised me a lot. It's really good. There are definitely some problems with the operating system being a bit clumsy and being a bit slow or getting caught at times, but I think for the price that 660 does well. All right, let's get onto the cameras of these three phones because they are definitely different as well. The Xiaomi 9 having that 3-camera setup. You've got a 48 megapixel Sony sensor, that's the main sensor, a 16 megapixel ultra wide camera and a 12 megapixel telephoto. Perfect setup for me. Just having a main camera, a telephoto and an ultra wide just makes perfect sense. The cameras are really great, very, very solid performer in that department. The Snapdragon 855 helps out a lot as well. The SE also has a 3-camera setup. You get the same 48 megapixel main camera. The ultra wide and the telephoto are different. The megapixels are lower, but also they're different sensors. Obviously not going to be as good as the sensors in the Xiaomi 9. The Redmi Note 7 has 1 camera. There are 2 units on the back there. One is a 5 megapixel depth sensor, so there's no imaging with that. You just get the one camera at the top there. That is a 48 megapixel sensor, but the Snapdragon 660 can't process those images, so you're not getting much sharper images than, for example, the 12 megapixel images that actually come out of this thing. The Redmi Note 7 does 1080p video, the other two doing 4K video. Actually, it's not a big deal breaker for me. I never film in 4K, it just takes up way too much space, and I don't think out of a phone sensor you really get a lot more clarity anyway. The video on this thing, the Redmi Note 7, I was so impressed with when I did my camera test versus an iPhone versus a Canon camera. A lot of people on Weibo in China said that they couldn't tell the difference between this and a Canon camera, and a lot said they actually preferred the video out of this thing than an iPhone and the Canon. So the video out of the Redmi Note 7 is really incredible. It has electronic image stabilization from the sensor. There's no optical image stabilization. That's the same in the SE and the Xiaomi 9, but obviously the processors get a bit better in each of them, so you would expect the video to be progressively better over the three phones. The Redmi Note 7 also has a headphone jack in the top, the other two don't. In terms of the selfie camera, again, expect just incremental improvements as you go up the line. But in terms of design, actually the camera bump, the water drop notch as they call it here, is very similar. The design is extremely similar between all three phones. The only thing I would say is that the bezels get smaller. They all have USB-C type charging, which is a big positive for me. No one should be using micro USB in 2019. The Note 7 has fast charging, the SE has fast charging, and of course the Xiaomi 9 has fast charging. The Xiaomi 9 also has wireless charging and a form of wireless fast charging as well. The SE and the Redmi don't. Fingerprint sensors on the 9 and the SE are under the screen. They use the same technology. Really love that. It's the most convenient way to unlock your phone. Actually, Face ID on these Xiaomis is really good as well. Really good, really quick, but not very secure. So I would say the fingerprint technology is the best of both worlds. It's secure and also convenient. Now you get that under the screen on the top two phones, and on the Redmi Note 7, it's on the back. So there's differences in the screen technology, screen size, there's differences in the chipset between all of them. But once you start adding options, it gets a bit complicated. See, the Redmi Note 7 starts at 1000 RMB in China, but that's for the 3GB version. 3 gigs of RAM is not a lot for Android. So you might want to buy a Redmi Note 7, and then at the checkout, maybe you just choose the option to add some RAM on top. Maybe you choose the 4GB version, or maybe you want to choose the 6GB version. But then the price goes up, and then the price starts to get into sort of mid-range territory. So the Redmi Note 7 starts at 999 RMB. That's for 3 gigs plus 32. If you want 4 gigs, it goes up to 1199. That has 64 gigs of memory. 6 gigabytes in the Redmi Note 7 with 64 gigs of memory is 1399. For the new Xiaomi 9 SE, you get 6 gigabytes with either 64 gigs or 128 gigs of storage. It starts at 1999 and then goes to 2299. For the full fat version, the Xiaomi 9, that starts at 6 with 128, 2999, goes up to 8 with 128, 3299. So as you can see, Xiaomi have been very careful to make sure that none of the prices overlap. Just goes up in a steady fashion. Of course, this is a company, they're very clever in doing that. So actually, as you can see, the Xiaomi 9 and the SE are very, very similar. The Xiaomi 9 is just a little bit cheaper. So you get the step down in processor, the camera units are also another step down. The phone is also a little bit smaller, but it keeps a lot of the features of the full-blown version. Coming down to the Redmi Note 7, this is obviously the budget option. There are a lot of features that this simply doesn't have. The bezels are bigger, and also the design and the materials used are cheaper. But in the big scheme of things, the way that you use the phones every day, it might not affect you that much. This is obviously the budget option, the starter, and then as you pay more money, you just get a slightly better device each time.